Good morning. Good morning. What do you all think? Should we do it again? Yeah. Thank you. Just to give you a little background on what we're doing right now, we had a member of our board that passed away last year that was very instrumental in the beginning of the fire school. It was basically treasurer and held every post on the school. He's a man that came from St. Michael's College, stayed with St. Michael's College, was assistant chief at St. Michael's College, worked with the kids, training them, taking care of the fire department and stuff like this over there. Bill was never married or anything like this, and he does have some family, but nobody that's really into the fire service and stuff like this. At our last meeting, we put through a resolution that to kind of, in a way, pay Bill back for what he did for us over the years, even though in the end, with his health and stuff like this, he wasn't around a whole heck of a lot. But as you'll see on the pictures up here, I think anybody that's had anything to do with Alberta Fire School can see him sitting at the table at registration. Being that there was no real family to, give everything to or anything like this, we thought that we would honor him by dedicating these schools to him. So what we have done, we put a resolution forth, and I'd like to read this resolution to Bill and to you people, and it's on the way. We have with us today Peter Soames. He is the chief of St. Michael's College. We'd like to invite Pete up to accept this. The resolution. North Country International Fire Training School, Alberta, Vermont, established in 1971. Whereas the Board of Fire Directors of the North Country International Fire Training Service intends to reinstate the tradition of an annual one-day firefighting educational seminar series. And whereas the Board of Directors of North Country International Fire Training Service wish to honor and remember the life and contributions of board member William Major. And whereas Bill gave unselfishly of his time, talent, in so many ways to North Country International Fire Training School Board of Directors, the instructors, the students, and the entire firefighting community served by North Country International Fire Training Service. And whereas Bill was instrumental in the success of many seminars sponsored by North Country International Fire Training Service in the past, and whereas Bill's dedication continues to be a source of inspiration to board members and firefighters, be it therefore resolved that the seminar Maximizing the Rural Firefighting Attack, held on February 18, 2006, is dedicated in memory of fallen brother William Major, and be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of North Country International Fire Training Service will make every possible effort to continue the annual presentation of a one-day seminar. The annual seminar will be from this day forward be titled the William Major Seminar Series. This resolution shall take effect immediately. The question of the foregoing was duly put to a vote, which resulted in the following. Members voting aye, 19. Members voting nay, 0. Members not present, 3. Meeting held at Albert Station, Route 2, Albert, Vermont, dated February 12, 2006. Certified to be a true copy, Joseph Lynn, Chairperson.
Bill's part of our family. He's one of the people of the St. Michael's Fire Department. It's a truly unique organization on the map. He saw it in your growth as well. And we will proudly display this in our new station. So thank you.
volume down again, huh? I'll tell you what, I don't know what it is. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry? See, that's off. This gremlin's up here. Anyway, it's amazing when you have people like that, Mr. Mazur, that were involved in doing stuff. You know, I had a great time at the break just talking with some of you. You know, people don't have a clue what's going on. The people you protect, you know, I mean, I live in Corpus Christi. There's 80 miles of beach you can drive on. And truthfully, it was one of the best trips. I don't know if I can stand in one place and not have this happen or what, but things making me nuts. Let me ask you something. Can you hear me back in the back all right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, because this thing's making me nuts. I'm not going to use it. You know, one of the things that happens, and I'm sure that happens a lot up here. You know, I came across the lake yesterday in that ferry, and I'm looking around at these mansions or summer homes or whatever people call them. They generate some of the greatest fire load you have. And the bottom line is they don't care whether you have a fire truck that works or not. Now, if people understood the amount of training and effort and time you people put in this voluntary time frame, it's amazing. You know, it's like one of the guys said, you know, this is Saturday, I'm giving it up, I could be doing other things, but this is really what I like to do and I want to be here for that. And that's one of the issues you need to think about. You know, Bernasini says, when's the last time somebody called you because they did something smart? Huh? We can race them into their emergency and say, quick, give it to me and let me take care of it. And then, when the place burns to the ground, they stick a microphone in our face and ask us why it burned down. And generally, what do you say? There wasn't enough water. Huh? Have you ever heard that? And if you say that, you should expect to be sued. Why? You tell me what other agencies in your community buy tanks, pumps, and water to move hose to move water with. So when you say there wasn't enough water, you're pointing the finger at yourself and saying, guess what? We're incompetent. And you should expect a lawsuit. Now, the bottom line is that you and I want to help people. But the fact is, it's their fire. And you're going out at 2 o'clock in the morning to help them with their fire. An insurance company was dumb enough to say if your house or your structure burns down, we'll build you a new one. They have a contract for that. Okay? There are fire departments out there, I don't know if any of you are one of them, but there are fire departments out there that are contract, subscription fire departments. You have to pay X number of dollars a year to respond. And if you're not a member, we'll come and we'll watch it, and we'll keep it from extending to adjacent properties. But you can't give me 90 bucks in and expect to be a member, because if you did that, there would never be any funding sources coming in. You know, people are making a big deal about rationing medical care. My God, we've rationed medical care and fire protection for years in this country. How can I tell? Because I go to Hartford, Connecticut, where I used to work, and there's all these 400 or 500 firefighters. And you say, why are all these fire trucks and all these firefighters here? And they say, well, they're there for life safety. Oh my God, at 5 o'clock every day during the week, everybody that works in Hartford evacuates Hartford. So why don't the fire trucks follow us home to where we're going to be sleeping? Because that's where most people die in fires, in the home. The fire trucks and all that stuff are in the big cities to protect property. Has nothing to do with life safety. Bottom line is that the insurance companies that insure your homes don't insure you, so they don't care if you die from a fire or not, because they're a life insurance company. And life insurance companies know no matter what, you're going to check out at some point in time anyway. Whether you get shot in a bar or die in a fire or just die of a heart attack, they don't care. So, part of what we all have to take a look at is we're trying to get resources to help people fix a problem, and the people with the problem aren't necessarily willing to help us actually fix that. You got a chance to see a couple videotapes, and the intent was just to get you thinking. I would imagine we had a laundry list of things up there that are issues that you have to deal with. The fire department you saw in those two videos is the same. One guy asked me, well, how old are those videos? Well, they're probably 15 years old. And if you went here today, that fire department looks different, but they act the same. Because what you saw was an attitudinal thing. Their attitude sucks. And that's like in the fire department. You can tell a fire department just basically how, by the way they behave, how they perform on a fire ground. And I think all of you need to realize that. We're going to show you another video. Interestingly enough, this video is of a fire department that is totally surrounded by the fire department you saw in the first two videos. Totally surrounded by them. They operate out of two stations. The town is about about 2 miles long and a half a mile wide. It's a residential community pretty much. Now what you're going to see when the video comes up, before you start that, what you're going to see is a pumper in front of a single-family dwelling fire. The fires involving the front third of the house. The initial report was the elderly lady who lives in the home may well be there, but they don't know for sure or not. You're going to see a two-person engine at the fire. You'll see a guy running from the front to the back of the building. That's actually the driver. There's two people on this engine. Okay? This is a combination fire department. They've got two stations with two people on duty at each station, a man and engine. But they also run EMS. And EMS is all voluntary, and it's run by a separate division that reports to the fire chief. There's always two EMT or paramedic people on duty. And the paramedics are volunteer. They pull duty. So there's two paramedics on duty at one station, and there's a medic unit at the other station on man. But when one medic unit goes out, they page out two more medics and bring them in to back up the other one. So what's going on here, what you're going to see is the engine in front of the fire. There's another engine coming in with two people on it. You'll see a white pickup truck come in. All their apparatus is white. You'll see a pickup truck come in, and the pickup truck is manned by the assistant fire chief. The assistant fire chief is full-time. The chief is volunteer. You'll see people as you look at the video, you'll see some interesting things. You'll see a police officer dragging hose, and that's his job. You'll see a guy in civilian clothes pulling a 2.5 off the back of the engine. No turnout gear, just civilian clothes. That's his job. He runs a road grader for the town. The city manager said, here's the deal. When you cops aren't busy shooting at somebody, and there's a fire emergency, you go and you work outside the hot zone to do whatever is safe for you to do as unskilled labor. Get off your road grader, jump in your pickup, and go to the fire, because they said, whether you're stretching hose in a fire or running the road grader, you still get the same pay. And the issue is, how can I economically provide fire protection to this town? And I have to tell you, you'll watch this, and what I want you to do at the end of it is tell me who's in charge. Just make observations, good, bad, or indifferent. We're going to talk about it. But as you take a look at this whole thing, I want you to let me know who's in charge of the fire and who's actually command. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you got to fast forward to get to
Yeah, I think we figured out the solution. This microphone works. Anyway, you see the front third of the house burning. When they pull in, they've written that off. See the hose line going along there? Now that's a Minuteman load. But the guy screwed up when he went to pull it, and instead of having all the slack at the end with it where it's supposed to be, he dumped it at the engine. Here comes the pickup truck on the left side. Now this is the driver of the first engine. He sets the pump. It's 1,000 pump, 750 tank. Their major concern is to get the line between what's burning, check for extension, and mainly find out if the lady is in the house. See, they've done triage of the house. They're putting the front third off. It's gone. Here's the other engine with 2 more people. Now, they may or may not have volunteers. This is a daytime fire, obviously, it's during the week, so everything is set up to work basically with 5 people. The 2 people on each engine, the assistant chief, and that assistant chief's pickup carries 1,500 feet of 5-inch, because they're using 5-inch for supply lines. So if the engine doesn't lay a line going in because it doesn't know if it needs it or not, they'll call the assistant chief and he lays the 5-inch line going in. The medic unit stops it and makes the hydrant connection. You may or may not, I don't remember this one. If you hear 3 blasts of the air horn, that means charging the supply line from the hydrant. Now what they're doing is they're checking for extension, mainly in the attic, and they got the line between what's burning and what isn't burning. So they're holding the fire and keep it from spreading. As other people come in, they're stretching the backup line. There's the cop, that's his job. Help him get that 1.5 inches or 1 3/4 inches, I should say, inside the building. See, as they move down, you can see the steam action moving down with them. They're pushing the fire up. You know, it's just like being an EMT. Once you get the patient stabilized, you basically eliminate the emergency. Once they got the line inside the house between what was burning, and here's Mikey. Mikey said, "Oh, I don't want the fire truck to get burned." It's like, there's always somebody working. Here's a guy who runs a road grader. They say, "Here, take this nozzle, stretch it out till we tell you to stop." The rule, the SOP is, when you pull an 1 3/4 attack line, the backup line's a 2.5. And that's what this 2.5 is. We stretched it off, and in a couple minutes you'll see a couple of firefighters manning it. The lady wasn't at home, so they didn't have to worry about any rescue. That's the fire marshal. They bought him a red leather helmet because he wanted a leather helmet. He's never fought a fire a day in his life. But he works 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, so they taught him how to run the pump. That's what he's doing. The guy with a black ear, black helmet, he's not SCBA qualified. That's how you can tell the difference between who can wear an air pack and go in the hot zone and who can't. Here's the backup crew in the 2.5. Notice they got their face pieces on and not hooked up. All they're there for is a backup in case they need a bigger line to back up the 1 3/4. If you pull a 2.5 pre-connected backup is a pre-connected master stream. They carry pre-connected portable monitors on their tailboards, so they can advance a 1,000-gallon master stream just like a hand line. These guys are getting ready to go inside and pull ceilings just to make sure there's no extension. But see, nobody had to tell them to do that. You don't see anybody there saying, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. That guy there is the assistant chief. That's the guy who's the ranking officer in the firemen. I had somebody say, well, that's the meaning. The assistant chief shouldn't be pulling windows. They said, look, when we get 6 people on the fire ground, everybody's a grunt. The guy there with the black helmet and stripes, non-SCBA qualified. So they do outside work. They do stuff in the warm and cold zone where you don't need SCBA. And again, that's the assistant chief. He's getting an extension ladder, not extension, but an attic ladder to take it inside so they can check for extension. There you go. Okay, you can turn it on. So, tell me what your observations were. I'm sorry?
Well-trained team.
They seem like they're a very well-trained team, huh? They're really, other than that first guy that was running along to get to the back, you didn't see anybody running around. You didn't see anybody saying, do this, do that. And that may not be the way you do things. But when you take a look at that compared to the first 2 video clips, isn't there a marked difference? So tell me what's different about this third one. Why do those people behave so differently? Attitude, training, SOPs. In Red Bank, Tennessee, here's the way we do things. If you pull 1 3/4 inch, the backup line is a 2.5 inch, and when you pull it off, charge it. If you're going into structure, you wear full gear, an SCBA, and breathe air from a cylinder. It's like, that other fire department you saw was Chattanooga, Tennessee. They totally surround Red Bank. Now, it's been a long time, but finally there's so many people who were volunteers or part-time people in Red Bank that have become full-time in Chattanooga. They have a waiting list of paid firefighters from Chattanooga to join Red Bank as volunteers to get training. Now, there's an interesting reason why. Because the former chief in Red Bank, the guy who organized all this, and 3 other people, they run the Tennessee Valley's Fire Training Center, which was one of the premier industrial fire training centers in the world. But nobody's ever seen it or heard of it because they used to do industrial stuff, mainly for nuclear power plants. But, you know, that guy who runs that training center used to be a chief in Red Bank, because the chief was volunteer, assistant chief full time. He was the head of fire training in the state of West Virginia for years. In fact, when we did the class up here in Plattsburgh, he and I taught it together. His name's Lee Husted. You know, what you see is how you can make things simple or you can make them complicated. You know, and that's exactly what Red Bank does. Somebody says, you mean to tell me that the assistant chief in that white pickup truck has 1,500 feet of 5-inch hose in the bed? I said, yeah. When Lee Husted first went to Red Bank, they had a load of 5-inch hose. They had never used it. And he asked the city manager and asked the guys in the fire department, why don't you use it? He said, oh, it's too hard to work with. So Red Bank was putting in, the city was putting in a bunch of hydrants. He went to the city manager and said, do me a favor. My God, don't put hydrants in every 300 feet. Put them in every 15 or 2,000 feet. And the city manager said, what are you talking about? He says, you space the hydrants at 1,500 or 2,000 foot intervals. And buy me the 5-inch hose, and hell, I can move the hydrants wherever I need them. City manager said, you're the first fire chief that ever saved me money. He went to the police chief and said, guess what? When there's a fire, I want your guys to help the fire people. I don't care if you like it or not. I mean, that city manager thinks that fire department walks on water. In fact, you'll probably see some slides later on. I'm not sure if I'll get into them or not. But on the back of Red Bank's engines, they carry pre-connected master streams, fed by 100 feet, 150 feet of 3-inch line. Their initial attack in any work in fire is that portable monitor. Some of you guys have blitz fires, some of you got little L carts. I was in a place yesterday, he said, look at that dumbass thing they put on that truck. I said, what's that? Ah, that stupid master stream on the back. You're supposed to hold it 2.5. It's like, you're insane. Right? They make a device so one person can stretch a pre-connected 2.5 and blast the shit out of a fire with 500 gallons a minute with one person, and you're telling me, well, we never did it that way. We need 4 people holding 2.5. You know, it's amazing. You want to make things easy? Make it easy. Now here's the kicker. Red Bank is only in ISO class 7 because they don't have all the paid people Chattanooga does. It's like, oh my God, if I had a fire in my house, I would sure hope that Red Bank or somebody like Red Bank would show up. The reason I point that out is because the one thing that all of you in here are here for today is to make your operations better. We listed a laundry list of the different pieces that kind of put everything together and make it all work. But what you have to ask is, well, why am I trying to make my fire department better? What am I trying to do differently that I couldn't do before? I don't know how many of you here are trying to work at improving your ISO rating for your community. Anybody? Okay, good. Understand something. ISO is a game, okay? What you do for ISO has nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, but virtually nothing to do with what you do at a fire. Okay? And that's just the way it is. So, I may do stuff with my apparatus to impress ISO. That may not be what I do when I go to a fire. Okay? Especially when it comes to water supply operations where ISO gives you credit for your ability to move water from point A to point B. Okay? So what I'd like to do, I want to share with you, let me get this computer set up. I want to share with you some Where's John? Just need to hit the button and go from video to computer. I have to tell you a little bit how I got to Texas. I went down, I worked as an engineer with an insurance company for years, but worked in training for 18 years. Basically training people that inspected IBM, General Motors, Ford, any major manufacturing or Fortune 1000 company, either factory mutual or us insured. Well, in order to get insurance from people like us, IRI was the name of it, you had to pump a lot of money into fire protection, full sprinkler protection, fire pumps, all of that. Well, back in the, I guess it was back in the mid-80s, late 80s, I had a chance to be alive there because it was getting wacko. With a severance package, I told my wife, so I can get out of there, I want to do my own thing. So, I got a kid brother, who's really a son I raised, but he's a battalion chief now in Montgomery County, Maryland. And he had gone down to Texas to a place called Refinery Terminal Fire Company to teach a pump course. And he said, the next time I go down, I want you to come down and help me with some of the outside stuff. He said, it's really a unique and different place. So I went down to teach a 2-day pump course and never left. But you talk about toys. But here's what I want to show you. You guys are saying you have a problem with water supplies, and you certainly do in most rural communities. But it becomes a matter of priority and what's at risk. What you're going to see here, this is a couple of fire trucks that I was involved in designing. I worked at Refinery Terminal Fire Company as a staff division chief in Corpus Christi. 150-man fire department, 30 pieces of apparatus that basically protects 10 refineries, the Port of Corpus Christi, a very highly specialized private volunteer. It was set up as a volunteer fire department, but in essence everybody there is full-time now. Quick attack evolution. What we wanted to be able to do, and this is, we had 2 sets of these trucks built at the same time. One set for Corpus Christi and one set for Motiva, which is a refinery in Louisiana, which we run the fire department at. The whole thing you have to look at. If you get a fire in a refinery, you have all these process columns. There's a 5, 10, 15-minute rule. Any of you that have ever talked about propane or blevy understand what a blevy is. In 5 minutes, you start to lose control of power cables. In 10 minutes, you can start to lose container failure, which means blevy. And in 15 minutes, you start to lose structural steel. That means you've got a 100-foot high or a 200-high-foot column. And if that thing starts to buckle, it's coming down. How do you keep it from doing that? You hit it with 10,000, a minimum of 10,000 gallons a minute initially. Say, well, how many people does it take to do that? Well, we have 5 people, a captain and 4 people. They respond with a van for the captain, kind of a command vehicle, and 2 pieces of apparatus. And what you're going to see here is, this is the engine. It's a foam firefighting pump. Has a 3,000 GPM Hale rear-mounted pump. Hale makes an 8FG. They're the only people that make a 3,000 GPM rated fire pump. It's got 3 rear intakes. There's yellow hose and red hose. That's 6-inch hose. 6-inch hose, we needed hose because when they're hooking up to these hydrants, pressure on those hydrants is 175 PSI. Okay? You got, well, because in refineries and that, you've got diesel fire pumps and electric fire pumps. I mean, to get 20,000 gallons a minute out of a system is not uncommon, but believe me, you need every drop. But you don't have the luxury of screwing around to get 20 people there to do it. So what you're seeing is, and we just did this off to the side, outside of one of the, actually it's outside the process here, but the pumper foam, this is actually foam 3, it pulls in, and what comes in behind it is an American France built by National Foam. Now both of these have got foam capability. The engine or the pumper up front has got a Williams hotshot system on it. It's got everything from 1.75" up to 6-inch discharges, and every discharge is Class B foam capable. The pumper carries 2,000 gallons of AFFF. What you see behind it is a towel. It's an American France chassis, 3,000 GPM Hale rear-mounted pump. And on top of that is a swing boom. You know the things they pump concrete with? Well, that's what that is, except it's got an 8-inch waterway, and it's got a 4,000 gallon per minute automatic nozzle made by Task Force Tips. I was in a meeting when my boss and I asked TFT, we said, what would it cost to make a 4,000 gallon per minute automatic nozzle that would range from 500 to 4,000? They said, God, you're talking about a lot of money. My boss says, how much would it be? The guy figured it out. He said, we'll take 2 of them. And, you know, but the bottom line is, when you're protecting refineries, especially in this day and age, you know, they haven't built a new refinery for a long time, so what's there, you better keep running. You know, you don't have time to screw around. And what I want all of you to think about is that you guys would say, well, we don't have all the equipment we need. It's outdated. You know why? Because the people you protect are satisfied with that level of fire protection. And I realize it's like shoveling crap against the tide all the time, but if they are content with that, then you say, you know what? We'll deliver the service that they are willing to pay for. And I know that sounds crazy. You know, there's an awful lot of fire chiefs and fire officers who go into cardiac arrest. The answer to the problem, I don't think, is physical fitness. It's to say, look, understand what my limitations are. If somebody is willing to build a single-family dwelling and not put residential sprinklers in it to save the occupant's life in the event of a fire, then when it really gets ripping at 2 o'clock in the morning, I should expect either to have those people out front waving at me, or we're going to take them out in body bags, because that's the reality of the situation. You know, if things have enough value, the cost to protect them is insignificant. Those two pieces of equipment together are $2 million. I went to Niagara, I did everything trying to find somebody to make me 6-inch hose that would take 300-pound working pressure. Snapface says, you don't want that kind of working pressure. I said, are you going to use a hose? Well, no. I said, then don't tell me what I need. I know what I want. You know, those stupid locks they put on your LVH, they're not put on there for safety. They put those on there intentionally to allow the manufacturers to make the coupling sloppy. Now, it used to be, if any of you remember the original Jaffrey, or Angus, or Snap-Type, when you went to turn your coupling, you had to use wrenches to make it snap. Well, the Americans can screw up a good thing no matter what. Now, they took that German coupling, and they wanted to change the tolerances on it. And they did. That made it very loose, it would come apart. So then they put these stupid safeties on it. That 6-inch hose you see there does not have locks on it. I went to Greg Cozy at Kochek, who started Kochek. I said, I want you to go back to the original stored specifications. Okay? I said, no locks, because when I first got down here, we had 10,000 feet of 6-inch made by Snap-Type. It would take 2 guys to hold the locks and 2 guys with wrenches to break the fitting. I mean, and these guys, believe me, these guys got mandatory 2 hours of physical fitness every day. When you walk in a room as a chief, they say, chief on deck, they come to attention. They don't salute, but I tell you, it's more military than the military is. And, you know, the fact is we need to make this job easy. And how I ended up working here was they did a burn one night, laid a 6-inch line into an existing pumper, and the pump is cavitating like hell. And I went over to the chief and I said, that stupid Snap-Type valve won't allow the water from the 6-inch line to get into the pump. You know, most of the big valves you guys put on the intakes for your LDH, they got a 3-inch waterway through them. Don't be surprised that the weak point in your water supply is not the hose, it's not the pump, it's a stupid valve you put on the outside. If any of you are buying a pump, I'll tell you right up front, buy a Hale, because Hale has got a bigger waterway than anybody, and I'm talking about intakes from the booster tank and just general intakes. And whatever you do, get Hale Master intake valves. They're butterfly valves, but they're oversized. I mean, if you want to get screwed big time, you get Watrous' intake valves, and what you're going to find, the ID is 6-inch. So you got a 6-inch circle, but the butterfly takes up a lot of that area. I had a guy call me because I write for Fire Rescue Magazine and did a thing on pump testing. The guy says, tell me why we got this brand spanking new pump and we can't get full capacity out of it. I said, send me some pictures. He told me about the valves. Well, it's the intake valve. The intake valve is what's keeping the water from getting into the pump. And that's the intake valve that comes from the manufacturer. Sometimes it's a matter of a strainer. But anyway, we started playing around with some ideas on these trucks, and you know, what I started to find out was, holy mackerel, you know, you would think if you're going to buy a pump from somebody, that all pumps are equal, and they're really not. you would think the piping would be the same, and it's really not. So we designed these things to really be very, very effective with minimum people. You see there, they're setting up the foam pumper. What we did is we color-coded the hose. All the hose was 100 footers, okay? The problem is we're carrying 5-inch attack line and 6-inch supply line. Because what you don't see, you may be able to see it there, we carry pre-connected portable TFT, not the Blitzfire, but the Crossfire, the 1250 hand line or 1250 nozzles, and they're pre-connected with 5-inch lines. So you lay 6-inch lines, you can make a hydrant with 1 or 2 6-inch lines, but then you pull if you really have a fire where you've got to get a master stream into it, you just hand stretch the portable monitor. The problem was when you send somebody out to get a hose, an adapter, they better know the difference between 5 and 6-inch storks. To make it simple, we took everything that was 6-inch storks and painted it orange. Everything that was 5-inch storks was green. Everything that was 2.5 was silver. Every intake and discharge on the truck that was for foam concentrate. Now this is stuff that costs about 40 bucks a gallon. If somebody happens to unscrew a cap and open a valve, that stuff that comes out is very expensive. So all the foam intake piping and foam discharge piping is painted yellow. It was color-coded, it made things simple. Now, if you had a 6-to-5 reducer, one side was orange, the other side was green. So when we looked at hose, we said we want to be able to lay 2 lines around the corner and not, if they get crisscrossed, not get them confused. So all the 6 inches got orange couplings. But there's 1,000 feet of 6-inch on the right side of that pumper that's yellow. Or tan, I should say, really. It's got orange couplings, 100-foot lengths. On the other side, there's another 1,000 foot or 900 feet of 6-inch, but it's orange. And what you see dropping down from the bed to the ground are 33-foot sections are red. We had 25 footers and we had 50 footers when they were using 5-inch. We asked the captains, what do you want? They said, well, invariably 25 is not long enough, 50 is too long. So what we did, we compromised, had 33 footers made up. So on the left side of the bed, when they go to make a hydrant, you're right next to it, they pull off the red stuff. If 33 feet is long enough, they disconnect the first section. If it isn't, they go to the second section. So that truck carries 2,000 feet of 6-inch. You'll also see at the top rear on that truck, there's a deck on each side. Elkhart Stingers, electrically operated, automatic TFT tips up to 2,000 gallons a minute. So what they're doing is they're setting up a supply line to get the deck gun going. The foam tower is setting up, they're chalking it, setting up the outriggers. Same thing, he's getting ready to hook it up, and you can see they're going to use a 33-foot section. And you can actually see at the bottom rear, there's where the intakes are across the back. There's 3 of them. One guy can break the connection. With not having the locks, one guy can break the connection. You still have to use wrenches. It's like the old snap type. You turn it so far, and to make it snap, you've got to use a wrench on it. They get 2 deck guns going off the foam pumper. You can see them to the left. And then they got a deck gun going off the foam tower while they're getting the tower set up. And here's the whole premise. If the fire is down low, then the foam pumper goes in first because they can hit it with the deck guns. If it's up high, they hold back and let the tower come in, because with the swing, you can reach up, over, and around behind things where you can't with an aerial or a snorkel. The guy running it is actually the guy in the foreground. It's a little remote control thing, like something you'd buy a Radio Shack you use to run that. But there it is there. You got 2,000, you got 4,000 coming off the 2 deck guns, and then you got the boom running. I wanted to share that with you because, you know, the reality is that you can have any amount of water for anything you want, if you're willing to pay for it. I did a project in a place out in California actually last August. And the interesting thing was, they make rockets there. They have the capability in that plant of flowing 50,000 gallons a minute. But the reality is they've got these huge rocket motors. I mean, basically, if you can see it, you're too close to it. And the major concern there is this stuff taking off. So, you know, if you had that kind of hazard in your community, you'd probably have that kind of protection. Anyway. Huh? Anyway, what we want to look at is, you know, some days this is kind of the best it gets. There we go. Now here's the fire chief saying, I don't understand. I did everything I was supposed to, but the building's gone. No, and the reality is that no matter what happens, no matter how good a job we try to do, invariably we have times when things just don't work the way they're supposed to. The thing I want you to understand, as I said before, I ask lots of dumb questions. And there's a great book out there. Some of you said there was a problem with politics. And that's really about relationships. There's a book called Please Understand Me. You got to pick up in a bookstore. It's in the self-help. It's been around forever. But what it is, it's based on personality type and how we interact with one another. And it's important, I think, for you to recognize that. Have any of you here ever taken a left brain or a right brain? Have you ever taken a test that tells you whether your left brain or right brain is dominant? You have? Do you remember which is which? Which one is dominant, left or right? Yeah. Huh? Right? How about anybody else in here? What are you? Left. Okay? Anybody else? And somebody say, what the hell is this crap? We paid money to come to listen to this. I came here to see fire pictures. That's okay. You'll see fire pictures. Don't worry. It's an interesting thing. Okay? Just like each of us has a right hand and a left hand, but one of them is dominant. And if you're my age and you grew up as a Catholic, your kid went to Catholic school, and you went to use your left hand, the nuns would smack you with the ruler to force you to write with your right hand because you were defective. Did that ever happen to anybody in this room? Yes, sir. There's a whole gang of people. Unfortunately, it didn't happen to me, but you know, I feel bad. Left-handed people are kind of in the minority. But whether you're left or right-handed, the fact of the matter is you've got two hands. And if you lost the use of your like I'm right-handed. If I lost the use of my right hand, I could eventually learn how to sign my name with my left hand. Okay? There are some people that are totally ambidextrous. They can write their signature with their right hand just as well as they can with their left hand. They're few and far between. There are people that are right eye dominant. You know, if you're going to be a hunter, you better know which eye is dominant. And if you're right-handed, that doesn't mean you're right eye dominant either. Like I'm right-handed and left eye dominant. You give me a gun, I could hit the broadside of a barn with my right eye. But let me hold it and use my left eye, I'll hit the target every time. It's the same with your brain. We each have two sides of our brains. And you might find out that the problem with Mikey has nothing to do with him being hard-headed. It's the fact that he has a different dominant brain hemisphere than you do. Okay? I want to talk just a little bit about left brain, right brain. Everyone is needed in the fire department. We need left brain people, we need right brain people. But the left side of our brain is good at doing certain things. The right side of our brain is good at doing other things that are just basically the direct opposite of the left brain. Like, for instance, the left brain focuses on details. The right brain focuses on the big picture. Okay? Then a hole in the roof. Well, how big do you want that to be, Chief? And should I get a 34-foot ladder or a 24-foot ladder? Do you want an axe or a chainsaw? Put a hole in the damn roof. Okay? See, I'm right brain. Just do it. I don't care how you do it. The left brain person says, well, what size ladder should I have? Do I need a chainsaw? Do I want a circular saw? It's like, don't get hung up on the details. Now, it's best to have both of you. Okay, it's great to have a right brain person and a left brain person. Why? Because you see the same picture, but from different perspectives. Okay? But if you want to make yourself nuts, and if you're right brain, try to find a left brain person and give them instructions, and vice versa. Okay? And the thing of it is, it's amazing. We're out here by every kind of radio we possibly can with as many channels as we can for fire and emergency services communications. We're spending gazillions of dollars on radios, and we're not spending a dime on how to teach the people who use them to talk. Huh? We all say things we don't mean. We do. My first wife, left brain. When you get a chance, would you take the garbage out? Sure. A week later, the garbage is touching the ceiling. She's upset. So what's wrong? Nothing. So what's wrong? You know. So what's wrong? You didn't take the garbage out yet. So what's my comeback? I haven't had a chance. If you want me to take the garbage out now, say take the garbage out now and I'll do it. But don't play games with me. But see, the words that she heard was, take the garbage out now. If you go to a fire, you run in on mutual aid, and you come up to the command officer and say, Chief, what do you want us to do? Would you mind putting the ladder up to the roof and bend it? And say, yeah, we would mind. We're not going to do that. And they'll get pissed. It's like, why did you ask me? I'll tell you what. You want to see how people get screwed up? Go into McDonald's, okay? You're going to walk in and look at you, nice little kid. Hi, can I help you? Say yes. And you make them nuts. Because at first they think you're deaf. It's like, I didn't come in here because I don't need help. It's like, if you want to sell stuff, say, how can I help you? The most used word in any shopping mall in this country is no thanks, just looking. It's like, when are you going to start teaching salespeople to say, hi, how can I help you? Oh, well, see, there's open and closed questions or questions that kind of like red light, green light. I can ask you a question like attorneys do on a witness stand where you can only say yes or no. But I can ask an open-end question and you can't answer it with yes or no. So the thing about looking at left brain, right brain, is the fact is that each of us has our strengths. Left brain makes lists for everything, the right brain hates lists. Left brains have neat desks, the right brain files their stuff in piles. One side is good at math. The left brain is very good at math, but the right side is very good at geometry, looking at shapes and putting things together. If just look at what you see there. The left brain likes to finish projects, right brain likes to start projects. Okay, here's the thing you need to think about. We're gonna get somebody to design a rocket to go to the moon and come back. Do you think that should be a left brain person or a right brain person? It better be somebody that pays attention to details. We want a left brain doing it. But let me ask you this. Who come up with the idea of sending a rocket to the moon in the first place? The right brain person. See, and I think it's important for you to look at that. Because your fire department's made up of left and right brain people. I don't know how frequently you have meetings, if it's every 2 weeks or once a month, but your typical fire department meeting is a great exercise in right brains fighting with left brains. You know, I mean, left brain people want everything organized. Right brain people said, I don't care, you know. Now, the thing you have to understand, there's a time to have things organized right, and there's a time where it's not so critical. I had a good friend of mine, a career, he was actually the training chief, a battalion chief in West Hartford, Connecticut. He got passed over 3 times for chief. And he kept saying, you know, I don't know why they're not making me the chief. I mean, he was a wonderful guy. He knew everything about everything, was sharp. But he was the kind of guy that when you had a 3-story building fully involved in fire, instead of yelling for mutual aid, he's going up the streets tightening the 2.5-inch hose couplings because they're leaking. You know, that is not a high priority. You know, there's a saying in the business world that says, look, don't worry about the ants coming underneath the walls when you got elephants coming over the top. and you know, when you take a look at NIMS, if you get an anal retentive person teaching you NIMS, you know, well, here's all the definitions you have to use. I'll tell you what an awful lot of people are doing. They're saying, you know what? We will not implement NIMS until we have 10 or more fire departments involved in an emergency. Prior to that, we will use our own local IMS system. You know, I mean, that's what Brunacini said. That whole latest book that he done is on local IMS. Make an incident management system that works for you. You know, you think about how many calls your department runs in a year, and how many of those really get very involved. And you say, you know, we have a very simple need in most incidents. Now, it might be nice to use NIMS, but you know, I know places where you can't pull a fire truck out of the station until there's 4 people on it. Because people said 2 in, 2 out. Whoa, wait a minute. 2 in, 2 out doesn't say you can have 4 people on a fire truck. Get the fire truck there. You know, one person can do a hell of a lot of firefighting from the outside of a building. Then you hear people say, we don't do that outside stuff, we go in. How many people in here have been trained as first responder awareness or operations in hazmat? Great. How many technicians? We got some hazmat techs in here? Let me see. We do? Okay, hazmat techs. I'm going to ask you a question, true or false. I need to put 2 hazmat techs in a hot zone. I can do that if I have 1 hazmat tech fully equipped and geared out in a war zone, true or false. I'm going to put 2 people in the hot zone. Level A suits, SCBA, the whole 9 yards. And those 2 people are going into the hot zone with 1 hazmat tech geared up in level A protection on standby in a war zone. True or false? Now, I saw some hands go up in here for hazmat technicians. But boy, it sure is quiet. The answer is false. You don't put anybody in a hot zone in a hazmat incident until you have 2 properly equipped and trained people in a war zone. And do you know in all the years we've been playing with hazmat, there's not been 1 hazmat technician killed in an incident? Now, you take those guys out of their suits and say, okay, you don't go in to fight a structure fire until there's 2 people outside to back you up, and those same people that understand hazmat say, we don't have time to do that at a fire. It's like, it's insanity. It's that kamikaze mentality that we're getting into doing something. And I'm not saying that you always have to have 2 people out, but the fact of the matter is, you know, if you just say, we take everything we do in a hazmat incident and apply it to a fire. Don't you have a hot, warm, and cold zone in a fire? Huh? So, okay. Does everybody in my fire department have to be able to go into the hot zone and fight fire? My God, no. You don't want Mikey in there. But I tell you what, there's a lot of stuff he can do in a warm or cold zone to support. And, you know, but this whole premise, and of course, a lot of state training agencies, a lot of them are saying, well, everybody's got to to do everything. I got a friend from Arkansas. He delivers fire trucks for Emergency 1. He delivered a brand new engine to this little rural community in which he lives in Arkansas. He never knew any of the guys in the fire department. So he delivers this pumper, spends 3 days with them, teaching them how to pump it. They said, he kind of gets to know them, they get to know him, they like each other. He says, they said, we're hurting for members, we'd like to have you join our fire department. And he said, well, I do a lot of traveling, but when I'm around, I'd be glad to help. He said, the only thing is, I don't want to fight fires. He said, but man, I could sure make this truck come in a fire. They said, no, you don't understand. If you joined our fire department, you're not qualified to drive that truck. And he says, what do you mean? I just spent 3 days teaching you how to operate it. They said, yeah, but before you can drive it, you got to be a certified firefighter level 1. Think about it. Does that make any sense? See, somebody says you need people. Yeah, you don't need firefighters. You need some. But my God, you may need people to direct traffic. You may need people to do business stuff. You may need people to drive trucks. In the state of Wisconsin, where they got tons of dairies up there, they got guys that drive milk tankers all day long. And they recruit milk truck drivers to drive their fire department tankers. They said, we ain't going out recruiting firefighters, we're getting drivers this month, because that's what we need. Those are all things you need to look at, because everybody's talking about this big problem recruiting and retaining volunteers. And the problem is, you can get people who might want to do some of this stuff, they don't want to do it all. I know departments that are begging to get volunteers. So they come in to sign up to be a firefighter, and they find out before they can get trained out here, they got to work bingo for 3 months. And that's an issue when you've got to do fundraising. But the fact is, I've seen fire departments where it's almost like the fire department exists for the sole purpose of the fundraising committee. The fundraising people raise all the money, and then they don't want to spend the money to buy any equipment for the firefighters, and that's a screwed up mess. Anyway, the question is, what about NFPA standards? There's a couple of standards I had mentioned before, NFPA 1710 and NFPA 1720. How many of you here have heard of NFPA 1500, the safety standard? And I'm sure you have talked to different salespeople that say, NFPA says this, NFPA says that. The purpose of NFPA standards is they're guidelines. There are things printed in NFPA standards that are 100% wrong. They're typos. There's an NFPA standard, NFPA 600, which is a standard on industrial fire brigades. And I was involved in writing that. Well, it says basically that every industrial fire brigade has to have an annual drill. And NFPA 600 parallels the stuff that NFPA 1500 has in it for public sector firefighters. But when you look under the definition of drill, it says a simulated exercise. It was supposed to be a simulation or exercise. But when it got typed up, that simulated didn't get taken out. So I had a safety director call me. He says, tell me, what is a drill? I said, what do you think a drill is? Well, he said, I think that's where you take all the people out and they go through an exercise to see if they can do the job that they're supposed to do. I said, yep, you're exactly right. But he said the definition says a simulated exercise. So what do you think a simulated exercise is? Is that like a simulated simulation? Huh? I mean, here's a guy with a master's degree in safety. I'm saying, there's a difference with complying with the words in the standard and complying with the intent. When you hear people talk about 2 in and 2 out, it says, you don't send 2 people into the structure until it's 2 out here. Tell me what the intent of that is. What's the intent of 2 in and 2 out? A backup crew. Okay? And how about if I send 2 in and there's only outside. Well, the thing you have to look at is if you really want to get hung up in weasel words, go through, say, you start off in respiratory protection standard because it says 2 in, 2 out, unless permitted by NFPA 1500. So you go through all the way through NFPA 1500 and it's a loop. There's no yes or no answer in any of the words named the NFPA standards. Now why do you think they did that? Weasel words. So if you're a captain and you have a 3-person crew counting yourself, and you think you can make a rescue, go do it. And of course, if you make the rescue and nobody hangs you out to dry, you're in good shape. But if you get somebody hurt, we're going to crucify you, we're going to use the book. Because basically we're going to say you didn't have good discretion. You know, anybody can sue anybody for anything, anytime. Here's the bottom line. What you would do at a fire is up to you. What I would do at a fire is up to me. Okay? The way I look at it, if I'm working with you, I ain't going to tell you what to do. And if you ain't working for me, you ain't telling me what to do. I know what I'm capable of doing, and I think you do. But the fact of the matter is that you get people out here who take the little interpretations of every standard. It's like, come on, give me a break. It's not little. It's look at what the intent is. Okay? How many of you have gone through rapid intervention team training? RIT team. A RIT team's good? Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da. Newsflash. RIT teams are no good. Who figured it out? Come on, who started RIT teams? Phoenix. Guess what? The best way to protect firefighters inside of a structure is with a backup team behind them with another hose line. Do we used to do that? Huh? Well, I mean, everybody out there saying rapid intervention isn't. Having 14 guys standing under a tarp out front with chainsaws and extra bottles doesn't do shit to help 2 people in trouble inside the building. Get a hose line in behind them. And that's what Phoenix is saying. They're talking about being on deck. You know, they lost a captain in a supermarket fire. You know, here's the thing you have to look at. Things in this business tend to go full cycle. There are people that establish RIT teams because it's a fashionable thing to do. You know, when I show up at a fire in the daytime and I got 3 people, one of them should be incident command, one should be safety, one should be accountability. Well, tell me what we're going to do in the meantime till some more warm bodies show up. I mean, those are all issues that everyone you need to think about. Because when you say you need more people, it's like, look, what do we need them to do? Is the intent to build a bureaucracy to manage a firefighting business, or is it to manage the incident and make sure it doesn't hurt people? If we take a look at standards, and we take a look at fire departments, there's roughly 26,000 plus fire departments in the United States. Okay? 7%, that top number, 7% protect populations of 25,000 and more, 11% protect populations of 10,000 to 24,000. Look at the very last number. 51% of the fire departments in this country protect populations less than 2,500. And that says this country, but I'll guarantee it's North America. And 17% protect populations between 2,500 and 5,000. Now you tell me who the vast majority of the fire service is in this country. Is it LA? Is it New York City? No, it's probably places like Champlain or wherever it is you're from, because you are in the fire service. I had 2 guys tell me yesterday, you know, we're rural out here and we have to haul all the water with us in tank trucks. So does 90% of the fire service. But you know what? I don't see one single state training program out there where they're doing training and teaching people how to use tankers. And my God, you get out in the West and they're fighting about whether it's a tender or a tanker. It's like, who cares? Call it a wheels. But it's just mind-boggling. Why do I point this out? I'll tell you why. Because your FEMA money is getting ready to disappear. The Fire Act grant money is going to be gone. You better pay attention to it. You got legislators up here at the federal level, because all that money is getting sucked into Homeland Defense, and what they're trying to say is the big cities need that money more than little rural communities. I don't know how many of you have got Fire Act grant monies, but I know places that bought all turnout gear. It's the first turnout gear they've ever had, an SCBA. People out west are buying used fire trucks. They said, my God, look at this pumper. It's only 20 years old. It's like it's brand new. The whole thing about this is the fire service does everything kind of bass-backwards. If we take a look at ISO-rated communities, across the bottom is the ISO scale that goes from 1 to 10. 1 is the absolute best. 10 is basically no fire department. Look at 8 and 9, especially 9. The vast majority of fire departments in this country, and again in North America, have an ISO rating of 9 or 8. What does that tell me? They don't really have any water supplies other than what they bring with them or what they find available. And it's only been the last 10 or so years that ISO finally has started giving you credit for your ability to move water. 44% of public protection classifications are 8, 9, or 10. The fact of the matter is that the thing about ISO is at least something that you can show the people you protect how you can save the money, okay? If you can jump from a Class 9 to a Class 8, you'll save homeowners and people in your community money. So you can show them the benefits of investing in the fire department. 68% of the fire departments serve populations less than 5,000. 44% protect municipalities with 8, 9, or 10. And when I asked the volunteer fire service and in general what kind of problems they had, they said inadequate funding, problem recruiting people to volunteer, obtaining training, and especially obtaining training that was specific to what they needed to have. Improving water supplies. Over the years, some of you may have seen these books. There's still some of them floating around. But back in the 80s, I had written those. I put together a book called The Volunteer Fire Chief's Guide to Avoiding a Hot Seat. Because we had a lot of people saying, what about liability issues? Well, here's where people get in trouble. And if you don't remember anything out of this whole day today other than this, remember this. Say what you do and do what you say. Okay? Say what you do what you say. I will bet you some of you work for companies that say they do one thing, and yet you can tell by the way they act, they don't practice what they preach. You want to get in trouble with the fire department? You tell me that your mission is to protect my life and property. And then when my property burns down, don't be surprised when I sue your butt. Say, you didn't protect my property. You look at all these mottos and stuff, mission statements people come up with. People get into trouble saying really neat things, but the fact is, when they don't accomplish what their mission said it was going to do, they get in trouble for that. What you need to remember is that you're going to respond to every emergency in your community to help your citizens deal with their emergencies as safely as possible for members of your fire department. See, when somebody has an emergency, it's theirs, not yours. Okay? I don't know if any of you follow how many firefighters have been killed in tanker rollovers. And I'll tell you what, you can baffle them, you can do everything you want to a tanker. Less than 1% of the tanker accidents is attributable to mechanical failure. 99-point-some% is a loose nut behind the wheel. I'm serious. And the problem is, well, a couple of things. sometimes when you get into areas like this that historically have been kind of like farming communities or where people had to drive heavy equipment, they respect the weight they've got. But you've got people out here buying tankers, and because it's too much effort to teach somebody to drive a standard transmission, we'll put an automatic. Just push the button and go. They do two things: push the button, push the gas, make it go fast. And then they go to stop it. It's like, oh, we forgot that lesson. I know people, in fact, I had a pumper built back in 1974, had a 10-speed road ranger in it. People said, why'd you do that? Because we had 5 guys in our department who didn't want to get behind the wheel, and the chief didn't have enough guts to say they couldn't drive. So we figured they may have to go in first gear low range, but eventually they'd get to the fire because they couldn't shift the thing. It's crazy, but the thing you have to take a look at, across the board, anybody that drives a truck over a certain GVW's got to have a CDL, a commercial driver's license. The fire service says, oh, it's not fair to make us have CDLs. So they say, okay, you guys don't need them. I mean, it's insanity. The people who need CDLs, in my estimation, more than the drivers that drive for a living are firefighters, especially volunteers. You work at RTFC, you want to drive those big trucks, you get a CDL. That means you need to know how to check the air brakes and make sure they're working. You need to climb underneath and check this, and this. But most importantly, you have to know how to handle it. And that's a real issue. How many of you get Fire Rescue Magazine in here? Great. Well, we're always looking for stuff. In fact, in November, this past November, we had Fire Rescue Conference in Las Vegas, and we had a rural track, and it was really very well accepted. And going to be doing even more of that stuff next year. But, they're pretty good people. The whole intent is look at it today, read it, use it tomorrow. Some of you had asked me, in fact, I brought a copy of this with me. It's up here, you can look at it. But working and updating those rural firefighting books were done back several years ago. It's called the Rural Firefighting Handbook. And part of what the thing is that's different today that wasn't around years ago is standards. If you look at prior to 1970, there were 18 NFPA standards that addressed the public fire service. Between 1971 and 1985, there was 21 standards created. And 34 standards created between 86 and 1999. So what you look at is that between 1914 and 2002, there were 94 NFPA standards that relate to the fire service, relate to your fire department put together. But most of those have come back in the last 10 years. And the reality is we're creating standards faster than people can absorb. And I tell you, the people who just just lie about some of this stuff, salesmen, they'll say, you know what NFPA says, you got to do this, this, and this. So we'll have time out. Well, let me look at the NFPA standard to see that, because, it's not necessarily that they're lying to you, but they're not necessarily telling you all the truth. And the other thing is that it is impossible to comply with every NFPA standard. Because if you try to comply with, for instance, something that's in the training standard, you're in violation of NFPA 1500, the safety standard. Because there are different committees that write the standards. The reason I point this out is this. When somebody comes into your department and says, now you have to comply with this standard, say, you know what? Let's look at what the intent is. And let's make sure that whatever we do in our fire department is not unsafe. We're not putting people at undue risk. This crap about firefighting being dangerous. Firefighting is risky. If firefighting is dangerous in your fire department, it's because you allow it to be. Okay? You want to look at what's dangerous. You take a look at the guys that are up there in Alaska going fishing for king crab. They kill more people in that industry and injure more than we ever thought of in the fire service. So, danger is a condition that you permit to exist. Okay? Risk altogether different. Okay? Risk of driving up here yesterday afternoon from Plattsburgh at 1 o'clock when I was driving up was pretty arid. Especially for that poor slob in that FedEx 18-wheeler that went off the road and rolled over, you know. It's like, that was pretty risky. Was it dangerous? It was dangerous if you were driving 90 miles an hour. But if you had a four-wheel drive vehicle and you had a seatbelt on and you were traveling along at a safe rate of speed and you weren't swaying all over the road, you're probably going to get from Plattsburgh up to here. So risk and danger are not synonymous. Now we've got 1710 and 1720. And the thing I want to point out to you is this. How do I figure out what resources I need to have for my fire department? NFPA 1710 was written for the career fire department. And the whole premise behind this thing, I mean, I was at the original meeting that was held in Phoenix to come up with a deployment standard. And the deployment standard was an idea of Bernasini's and the IFF and a bunch of other people, and they said, we need to have a standard for suburban and urban areas of 25,000 population and greater. Because what was happening is all these consultants were coming in and helping the city administration figure out what they needed for a fire department. And everybody was using their own basic premise because there was no standard. So they ended up creating NFPA 1710, which is for career departments. They have another standard. Originally it was all going to be one. They fought for 5 years and they said, no, we better make it 2. 1720 is the standard for the organization, deployment of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and special operations to the public by volunteer fire departments. Same exact title, changed one word, volunteer career. So what does it say? Well, it talks about deployment. NFPA 17, the career or the paid standard, says this. The fire department's fire suppression resources shall be deployed for, and it says the arrival of an engine company within 4-minute response time and or initial full alarm assignment within 8 minutes 90% of the time. So you say, what's that? Well, what that is this. I need a firefighter to establish incident command. I need a person. I need a driver operator to establish a 400-gallon water supply that's capable of lasting 30 minutes. Okay? Understand, until NFPA 1710 came out, there was never an NFPA standard that said you had to have a driver operator. You remember the video that Red Bank had? The pump operator charged the line, got the pump set up, and took off. Somebody said, there's nobody running the pump. Yep. Now here's what you need to think about. When's the last time you saw a fire pump break down in a fire? And when's the last time you saw a pump operator break down or fail at a fire? See, you don't need somebody standing guard in the pump. I mean, people say, oh, you got to have somebody there running the pump on it. Once it's set up, it'll run itself. I mean, certainly you've got to make sure it's got water and stuff, but the fact of the matter is that I don't know how many of you are routinely people who drive a pumper to the fire, but I'll tell you this. I ran more fires as a pump operator than I ever did as a fire officer. Why? I had the address. I'm sitting on side A. The chief's running around like he's practicing for the Olympics, and I'm looking at what's going on. And I go and say, hey, Chief, I think we better call mutual aid. We got a fire showing up to the corner of that building. Okay, go ahead, call him. Now, the neat thing about it was, if the place burned down, they're looking for the guy in the white coat, not me. So here he is. He did it over there. I mean, think about it. Who is in a better position to look at the overall operation than the first-in pump operator? Huh? I mean, isn't that a pretty good position to say, boy, once I get my lines charged, I can kind of see what's going on here. It's amazing. Now you got to stand stand there and watch that pump. Those are all things you need to think about. You see, traditionally, we had somebody at the pump. I need 4 firefighters, 2 for attack and 2 for backup lines, flowing a total of 300 gallons per minute. Total, that's 150 each. I need 2 firefighters, 1 each to support each attack and backup. 2 firefighters for search and rescue, a team. And a ventilation team, 2 firefighters. 2 firefighters for initial rapid intervention team. And a driver operator if I'm going to have an aerial there. So the total is 14 or 15 personnel. Okay? So let's back up a minute. Now remember, this is for career fire departments. What do they require for volunteer departments? Well, in essence, if you take a look at this, based on what we just looked at for 1710, that's a 2-alarm fire. Why? Because it's going to need more than 300 gallons a minute to knock it down. And here you see 2 guys getting ready to stretch 1.5 inches, or 1 3/4 inches, I should say, into the fire. It's like you're going after an elephant with a BB gun. You understand that? No, hurry up, give me water, give me water. See, the guy at the nozzle is going to have a ball. The backup guy won't have so much fun, but eventually the guy in the nozzle will tire out. He'll get to play with the nozzle too. It's like, you know, maybe what we should do is make this like a ride at Disney. If you could have this and let these guys go squirt water and get that out of the system, maybe they'd start saying, when we have a fire that big, we need to hit it with a deck gun. There ain't no sense playing around with a hand line when you have a master stream fire. But yet we're taught to start off small, get the next bigger line, get mutual aid, get 10 more companies. Deployment for volunteers says the fire department shall identify minimum staffing requirements to ensure a sufficient number of members are available to operate safely and effectively. The number and type of units shall be determined by either risk analysis or pre-fire planning, and I prefer the term pre-fire decision making. You know what 1720 says? You figure out what you need and get the people to do it. Now, I'll tell you, the last thing you want is somebody putting numbers in that stupid standard saying, here's how many people you need. I got a good friend that's a career firefighter in Connecticut. He and I have had running battles over the years. He's a good IFF union member. And believe me, the IFF's the best friend the fire service had. Shit, they got enough money to get things pushed through that help the volunteers more than volunteers have done. But the fact is that, you know, this buddy of mine thinks he has kind of like a single track mind. Career guys can do a better job than volunteers. So one day we were in there and I was talking to him. I said, you know, I'll bet you I can do more with 2 people than you can with 5. You're crazy. And he's the kind of guy, if you just tweak his buttons right, you can really get him to launch. And he got to the point where he was ready to put some money on it. I said, okay, Mike. I said, you sure? By God, I'll prove it to you. I said, but there's one stipulation. He said, what's the stipulation? I said, I'm going to pick my 2 people. What sure you are? I said, I'm going to pick your 5 too. I'm going to get 5 Mikey clones. Right? Every fire department has somebody that can't walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. All right? They always got some part of their body bandaged up for some reason. It may not have been in a fire. It's like, God, he's got another cast on. You know what I mean? Those are the 5 I'm going to pick. See, you can't just say, well, if I have more people, I'll do a better job. No, there's no correlation to that. So the fact is, you say, well, if I can do an assessment, if I can look at my community, and we determine, based on some sound information, what we need to have, then we can figure that out. Now, you call yourselves fire departments. Is that correct? Even though the bulk of your business is not fire related. You spend more time, I would imagine, extricating people from cars. If you run ambulance service, you run more EMS or first aid calls than anything else. You know, what you ought to do is call yourself what you are. You're an EMS service every now and then catches a fire. But if you want to call yourself fire department, then we should at least focus on what we're supposed to really be good at, which is fire, right? Okay? So, the thing we want to look at in talking about these standards is that NFPA 1710 is a prescription standard that says, here's how to do it. NFPA 1720, the volunteer standard, is a performance standard. It says, you do a risk assessment, figure out what you need, and then put in place what you need to have to do that. So what do? Well, you take charge of your own destiny. Basically, you say, look, the XYZ fire department is the authority having jurisdiction. We're not going to have somebody from the state capitol or some other place say, here's what your fire department needs to be, but we can do a risk assessment of our community. And you have to remember, the community is what determines the level of service, or what the level of acceptable risk is. If they don't want to buy you another pumper because they say they don't have money, and you make the case to them and they won't buy it, say, okay, understand something. We will work within the limits of the equipment you give me. Okay? You pull the best parts from the NFPA standards or other documents. I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the internet. You know, I firmly believe in stealing stuff. There ain't no sense in reinventing procedures if you can get something from somebody that works and make it work for you. Don't make the simple complicated. You know, if you put too many options on the fire truck and give people too many choices, you complicate them. We used to have a problem with people pulling booster lines. We solved that. We took the booster reels off. You can't pull it if you can't find it. No? Develop written policies and procedures that say, here's what we're going to do, and the procedures say, here's how you do it. And most of all, have fun doing what you love. So, we want to take a look and talk about doing a community risk assessment. And really, we need to take a look at 5 things. If I want to look at fire control, there are 5 factors that I have to look at. And I'm talking about evaluating a fire department, operations, whatever. The 5 things are at the bottom. Agent, time. How much time do I have to react? How much agent do I need? Now, how do I get the agent there? Well, I need hardware. I need pumps, I need tanks, I need hose, I need people up there, and then procedures. And procedures are the things that tell the people how to use the hardware. Okay? So all of those things are critical. Generally, the one that's most critical is time. You people have long distances to respond to, but generally, there's a good chance whenever you're notified of the fire's been seen from the exterior of the structure, which means it's pretty much, the building's pretty much shot. So time and that become critical. But what I have to look at, if I'm going to war, and that's what you're doing, you say, I better make sure to load up on ammunition. Because if I don't have the ammunition I need, I can have all the artillery, all the rifles, all the soldiers, all the manpower to use them, but without ammunition, it ain't going to work very well. So anyway, it's just about time for us to break for lunch, and I have an assignment for you. If we can get the lights brought back up.
Wake them up.
What you have is, you've got 2 handouts. One's got a yellow number on the front, and one has a white one. The white one are standard operating procedures. There's a lot more stuff here than what we have time to cover today. But these procedures basically are self-explanatory, and they're intended for you to take back to your departments and use in doing it in a risk assessment. And what I'd like you to do, we're going to break, what are we breaking? How long for lunch? What, half hour? Okay. What I would like you to do is, these SOPs, if you look at them, are numbered in the upper right-hand corner. And you'll notice on the left-hand upper left corner, there's a blank space with a line. If you want to take these back and put the name of your fire department in and use them as your SOPs, that's fine. That's why we give them to you. But a couple of things I want you to do. Look at SOP 611. You'll notice the SOPs are numbered in the upper right-hand corner, and then each page is numbered at the bottom right or bottom left, like 611-1, that's the page number. SOP 611 is a method of determining how much water I need to have for a structure fire. It's the Iowa State rate of flow method. You may or may not be familiar with it, but I'd like you to look that over. I'd also like you to look over SOP 612. That's a method of calculating needed fire flow based on what the National Fire Academy teaches, or the National Fire Academy method. There's another one, SOP 613, and that's an NFPA standard on rural and suburban water supplies for firefighting. Okay? So these are all tools that, if you were going to hire a consultant to come in and say, tell us what we need to do in our fire department to comply with NFPA 1720, this is where you start. The first thing you look at is what's there to burn, and based on that, how much agent do I need to have? And based on the amount of agent I need to have, then how many pumpers or tankers or hose lines do I have to get it there? And if I need 1,000 gallons a minute to fight a fire, how many people do I need to have to man the hose lines? And if all I need is 250, how many people do I need? So all of these things get you to the answers of those questions. If you take a look, there's another one, 214. And 214, actually, it's a sample form that you can use where you want to do a water supply survey. So all you got to do here is kind of fill in the blanks. That's something, again, you can take back and photocopy and use. Call it pre-fire planning, pre-fire decision making, whatever. And then 614.2 is a form that you can use. Let's say you have a farm and there's half a dozen buildings. Well, you can use this to determine which of those has the greatest demand for water and what you should have for a water supply available at that farm when and if there's a fire. And then the last one I want you to look at, this is just pretty simple, it's 615. It's what ISO requires for single-family dwellings. In other words, it says there, if you've got single-family dwellings more than 100 feet apart, then you need to have a needed fire flow of 500 GPM. And their whole premise is as the buildings get closer together, and the interesting thing is the size is irrelevant. But the distance between them, as it decreases, the flow goes up. And the reason I want you to look at those SOPs is because when you come back after lunch, we're going to work on a couple scenarios to see how you put these to use. And to also see, out of the 4 methods that are there, which is probably the most practical to use and which probably gives you the better information or the best information. So anyway, I've got noon time. You need to make direction? Okay, with beer then. Okay, well, hang on a minute. Before you head out, we have some words of instruction up here. I assume it's words of instruction. Maybe you just want to double check.
Guys, go on the whole day, you had a good morning, and we don't want any food brought in here. The school doesn't like any food in this room also. If you please keep your food outside and in the cafeteria. Thanks, have a good